Oh, there sadly is yet another example of the heinous brutality of ISIS against Christians. A group linked to the radical Islamic terror group saying it executed 11 Christians in Nigeria. That in retaliation for the death of ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi during that U.S. raid in Syria in October. And they say the massacre was planned to coincide with Christmas Day, just the latest example of the targeting and killing of Christians because of their faith. John Hanna joins us, former National Security Advisor and senior counselor at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracy. John, this is just heartbreaking. It's been happening all over the world. It seems to be growing. If you're Christian, you're going to get massacred and killed, depending upon where you live. And this is just the latest example, not just of ISIS, but of the heinous discrimination against people who practice their faith.
Yeah, no question, Eric. People shouldn't be fooled. Baghdadi's death offers a convenient excuse, but these extremists in Nigeria, across West Africa, and as we know, around the world, have been targeting Christians for years now. So this is a very, very serious problem. It's one the United States has really got to keep its eyes on, even as we begin to move forces to work against more conventional threats like Russia and China. This is a very powerful, horrific reminder that this threat of Islamic jihadism is not going away. And if we allow it to fester in a country as important as Nigeria, it eventually is going to come back to bite us. So we've got to figure out more cost-effective and sustainable ways to stay in this fight, even as we deal with the threats from China and Russia.
It was been announced that the Pentagon considering rotating some of the forces we have in Africa out to face Russia and China. Do you think that's wise, and how could that impact the attacks on Christians?
Well, I mean, we've only got a limited number of forces, and we really do have to deal with these emerging great power rivals in China and Russia, Eric. But again, the trick here, I think, even as we move forces away, is to find real, reliable local partners who we can work with in a sustainable and cost-effective way, who will take the fight to these extremists. The fact is, in Nigeria, there are just far too many repeated stories of the national security forces either passively looking the other way or getting into the fight too late after massacres have occurred of Christians. That has got to stop, and the world has got to hold the Nigerian government and other governments to account. I do also think in places like Nigeria, we've got to work with the national government to start empowering local communities, including Christian communities, to be able to organize and train and arm themselves in their own defense against these marauding bands of Islamic extremists.
And of course, 4 of our service members last year were murdered while they were on patrol in Nigeria, trying to protect people against the radical Islamic militants and terrorists that are there. Meanwhile, the president does have a plan that he announced to the United Nations when he was up here in New York in September that basically involves the business community and others and government together to try and fight religious persecution. It was for religious freedom. Here are some of the president's remarks.
Regrettably, the religious freedom enjoyed by American citizens is rare in the world. Approximately 80% of the world's population live in countries where religious liberty is threatened, restricted, or even banned. And when I heard that number, I said, please go back and check it, because it can't possibly be correct. And sadly, it was 80%.
80%, and let's take a look at some of the figures. The group Open Borders USA, 245 million Christians persecuted, more than 4,000 killed this past year, more than 2,600 detained, 1,266 churches or Christian buildings attacked. The primary cause is Islamic oppression, they say, of the countries in the world that persecute Christians. North Korea is number 1, 18 years in a row. I'm sure Kim Jong-un is proud of that. How can we stop this? How can we stem this? How can we better protect Christians, do you think, John?
Problem, Eric, and it happens, as you said, around the world. The United States has got huge responsibilities. We can't be everywhere at once. So we really do have to find in places local partners who are prepared to shine a spotlight on this, to hold national governments to account, to protect these local communities. And then, as I said, I think the time has come, particularly for Christians in very vulnerable areas throughout Africa, in parts of Asia, as well as in the Middle East, those declining communities of Christians. We've got to find a way to empower them the way that we empowered local Kurdish communities in the Middle East, to be able to organize, arm themselves, and train themselves to defend their own local areas when their national governments are failing to do so. We've got to look for some fairly far-reaching solutions here, because Christians are being targeted, even as Muslims and other faiths around the world are being targeted by Christians, more than any other, driven by this ideology of Islamist extremism. There needs to be an international effort, and I think that's where U.S. leadership can really come into play, to shine a spotlight on this and to do something about it using all of the instruments of national power, not just military, at our disposal.
Especially as we are reminded at this time of the year. John Hanna of the Foundation of Defense of Democracies, thank you. And folks, if you want more information on this, opendoorsusa.org. They have some plans and ways that you can reach out through apps to those Christians who are being persecuted and suffer around the globe. John, thank you.